Welcome everyone to the Grassroots Fund Grants Program Overview webinar. We hope to give you an overview of each of our grants programs, though we'll note that there's more to learn, so please feel free to contact us if you have further questions. These are the program managers that we have at the Grassroots Fund and also that are on this webinar today. We've got myself, Tess Beam. I am the program manager for our Seeds and Events grants. We've got Laura Flagg, program manager for the Grow grants, and Audrey Irvine Broke, program manager for the Young Leaders grants. So a quick overview for those of you that are new to the Grassroots Fund work. We work New England-wide across all 6 New England states and are looking to fund grassroots community organizers and advocates that are working around environmental and social justice issues with a clear focus on community context and community-driven work. Today, though, and those cover our Fostering Innovations program area, Amplifying Voices, Convening Changemakers, and Revolutionizing Philanthropy, all which you can learn more about on our website. Today, for our grants program, we're focusing on the Fostering Innovations. So a quick intro to what you can expect to learn from this webinar. It will be, as I've stated, an overview of each of our major grants programs, an understanding of the similarities and differences across the different grants programs, as well as an understanding of what types of groups or projects we look for in considering alignment and appropriate match for each of the grants programs.
So this is Audrey Irvine Broke. I am the program manager for the Young Leader Grant, which we're going to talk about today. But we wanted to start off with kind of the general criteria that applies to all of our grants. So we're going to dive into that and then try to help you kind of figure out which different grants might be helpful given where your group is at. So we are looking for groups that are aligned with our mission. So the Grassroots Fund is dedicated to supporting the work of grassroots groups, creating healthy and sustainable communities in New England. We work with people on the ground, particularly grassroots groups that aren't kind of traditionally within the funding world or have access to those resources, to identify, select, and achieve the specific tools, resources, and connections that they need to achieve their vision for the community. And in addition to our mission, we also really focus on these guiding values, which you can read more about at the link that's at the bottom of this slide. These are some criteria that we are holding ourselves to as an organization and that we look to see reflected in the kind of groups that we are reaching out to and that we're funding through our participatory process. And finally, we are really focused on these 5 issue areas. There's a lot of work that fits into all of them. Again, we suggest that you learn more, but just to have kind of a starting point for the types of work that we fund, we are looking at organizations that are working in the realms of energy and climate, food, land and water, environmental health, and new or living economies. And then there's the pieces that we don't fund, again, across all of our grant programs. So we don't fund groups that don't work in New England. We're really looking for groups that are volunteer driven, so not individuals, but are really have at least a few core volunteers, and that don't have more than 2 paid full-time staff or the equivalent. We also are looking for organizations that have an annual operating budget under $100,000 a year, with the exception of our Young Leader Grant, which has a higher cap of $175,000. And then finally, we're really looking at local efforts. So we do not fund regional, statewide, or national projects. And then just to reiterate some of the things that we truly cannot fund, lobbying or partisan political activities, acquisition of land and or buildings, studies with no follow-up actions, publications of books or reports, micro or mini grant programs, individuals, or for-profits.
This is a brief overview or synopsis of our main grants programs, and these are the 3 that we'll be digging into further today. We've got our Seed Grant, our Grow Grant, and our Young Leaders grants. So first off is our Seed Grant. The frequency and deadline of this is open and accepted on a rolling basis. With that, it has one of the quickest turnaround times for our grant programs, about 4 to 6 weeks. I'm the staff person for that. My name is Tess. And the grant range is about $250 to $1,000. And thinking about the purpose of this grant is really for quick, responsive projects that are perhaps in the fledgling stages for volunteer groups that are launching newly evolving work within their community. So thinking about who or what types of projects might apply for a seed grant is if it's launching a new or recently evolving community-based project. Expenses are perhaps for some of the overhead in starting the project, such as materials, outreach, or some of those hard costs associated with projects. It's also aimed at groups that need a fairly quick response time. And in thinking about eligibility, must have submitted their last seed application no less than a year ago.
Hi everyone, this is Laura. I'm the program manager of the GROW Grants, which I'll go a little bit more into now. So for GROW Grants, we have 2 deadlines a year. So unlike SEED, you have to just make sure that you have these dates written in your calendar and know when they're approaching. Our first is in the spring, which is in mid-March, and then our second is in the fall in mid-September. For the grant range, we provide funding for projects that are looking for about $1,000 to $3,500. And this is just for groups that are maybe a little further along in their planning process or their community organizing than those that are looking to apply for seed grants. We consider these competitive group development grants that are dedicated to helping these established groups increase their capacity, their ability to collaborate and leverage impact in their community. So if you're thinking to apply for a GROW grant, really your group should be looking to get assistance for helping deepening and expanding their community project. We cover expenses that include general operating costs, stipends for coordinators or volunteers, capacity building programs, program development, or expert assistance. We also just cover costs associated with the project that might actually be like material costs. We really ask that the group that has been active for more than 1 year, this is really the part where we're looking for established groups rather than groups that are just starting off. And then similar to SEED, you must have submitted your last successful GROW application no less than 1 year ago.
Okay, this is Audrey again, and I'm going to touch back on the Young Leaders grants. So we do things a little differently for this grant. It's once a year, and there is a letter of interest that is still through our online application system that this year was due in early March and can be expected around that time. We do this letter of interest stage before the full application just to ensure that the youth leadership component of applications is really there. And also because these are bigger grants, they're meant for organizations that are perhaps a little bit more established, and so we have that opportunity to recommend Seed or GROW. If this is something you have questions about for your organization, I would really suggest getting in touch with me in advance of the letter of interest stage, and we can talk it out and just hear more about your project. But the purpose of these grants really is to be focusing on projects that are led, co-created by youth, or are really engaging youth kind of from the start of their work to be working in grassroots groups and as change makers in their community. So this is a very specific grant with a little bit of a higher grant range because of our kind of feedback from grantees and our community that we just want to be investing more in young leaders.
So after you apply to all of our different grants programs, there are certain things that you can expect. The first really is the grant review process. So as Tess mentioned, for SEED, the review process takes about 4 to 6 weeks. For GROW, it takes about 3 months. And for young leaders, starting from when your letter of interest is first submitted, it takes about 3 to 4 months. So we really aim to make our decision-making process as participatory and transparent as possible for applicants. Each level does have a different review process, but at the core of all of them are our guiding values of shifting power and shared decision-making. So these guiding values that Audrey mentioned at the beginning of our webinar are really the basis that we use for scoring and reviewing all of our grants programs. So if you're awarded funding, this is something that we would definitely go into more detail throughout your grant round, but we just wanted to give you kind of an overview of what to expect. The first, you can celebrate. You receive funding for your grant program, which is awesome. Or sorry, you receive funding for your project, which is awesome. And then there are a couple of things we do kind of expect from our grant awardees. So one, we'll have people sign up for a grantee call within at least 1 year that you are awarded the funding. And these grantee calls just happen each month. You can sign up for any of them. They're 1-hour calls where you're able to converse and share challenges or anything that has gone well for your project with other grantee groups across all grant levels. So if you're a seed grantee, you might be with Young Leader awardees or Grow and vice versa. And then at the end, once all of your funds are spent, we do expect a grant report from our awardees. This is the final step in our grant program. It's a very brief grant report that is available on our website, but this is all materials that would be sent to you once you receive funding. And then the last thing we really wanted to leave you with is how often you can apply. Since we do have 3 different grants programs, all of which have different review cycles, different deadlines, and with SEED that since it's rolling, we want to just make it clear when a group can apply and how often. So an individual group is able to apply to 1 grant per year within each grant type. So if you wanted to, for example, you could apply to SEED at any point. In that same year, you could apply to the fall Grow program, and you could have also applied to the spring Young Leaders. However, you cannot apply to the spring Young Leaders and Grow Young Leaders at the same time. You can't have 2 active grant applications going. And then also, if you do want to apply to another grant program, you just have to make sure all of the funds from your first grant have been expended and your final grant report has been submitted to us. These restrictions really only apply if you were awarded partial or full funding. If your application was denied, you're welcome to apply again to any of our programs. And a question we do get often is if there are restrictions on how many grants we can award to each group. We have no restrictions, but the key that we really want to emphasize is innovation. So if you have applied to us previously, reviewers will be looking for growth, expansion, or deepening of the work in subsequent applications from the same group. So that was a brief overview from the 3 program managers here. Tess, again, leads the SEED program. If you have any questions, you can contact her at tess@grassrootsfund.org. I'm Laura. I manage the Grow program, and you can contact me at laura@grassrootsfund.org. And then Audrey also joined us. She is the manager of the Young Leaders program, and she can be contacted at audrey@grassrootsfund.org. We definitely encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions about a potential project or application. If you're in the process of working on an application, definitely reach out to us with any questions as well. And we hope to receive applications from you all. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.